This is a disclaimer. This episode may contain graphic descriptions of crime and criminal activity. It therefore may not be suitable for listeners under the age of 18 or those who may find the descriptions disturbing. Listeners' discretion is advised. Welcome to Season 3 of Krime KE podcast. My name is Ajuma, and I am very grateful that you found time to listen in today. Now, if you're in Kenya, I want to take this time and send a lot of hugs and a lot of love during this revolutionary season. Many troubling events are happening right now, a lot of police brutality, and we can't afford to look away right now. Most of the time on social media and even on the ground during the protests, we are met with very graphic images, very depressing news, and I didn't want to start this episode without reminding you that your voice matters. And I hope that we all live to see the day that this great country is liberated, because we do deserve a country that works for us. Now, moving on to today's episode. In today's episode, we're going to get into the story of Starlet Wahu. This story took place early last year, and I remember where I was and how I felt after this story broke. This is one of the stories that fueled the end femicide protests in Kenya, because the reactions were very brutal, especially towards Starlet Wahu, who was the victim. Now, without further ado, let us get into today's episode, and please stick around until the end of this episode to find out how you can support this podcast. On the night of January 3rd, 2024 at around 8:10 p.m., CCTV footage from Papino Apartments in South B of Nairobi showed 26-year-old Starlet Wahu Mwangi in the company of a man heading into the apartment. The apartment that they had booked for the night was Y32. The man, who can be seen in the footage wearing a denim shirt, would later be identified as 34-year-old John Matara. And it would also be determined that they had booked the apartment as an Airbnb for the night. Now, Starlet did not realize that this footage would be among the last recorded moments of her life. In the videos, the two are seen taking the elevator and heading to their apartment for the night. According to different analysis of the footage, they appeared to be getting along well and even engaging in a conversation before they disappeared into the elevator. Now, later that night, at around 4 a.m., the same CCTV footage showed Matara stumbling out of the elevator alone. He had a white towel wrapped around his neck and was struggling to walk. And the people who were in the elevator with him were staring at him as he walked away in what was described as a huff. The security guard said that when he saw Matara leaving that morning, he realized that he had on bloody clothes. He said that he looked disturbed and he looked like he had injured his leg. Something about the way he looked didn't seem right to him, and because he had earlier seen him in the company of a woman, he decided that it would be best to check up on the woman who was back in the Airbnb apartment. He called the house owner and basically informed him of what he had observed. The owner of the house decided to use a spare key and access the apartment because they found Matara had locked it on his way out. And that is when they were met by what I can only describe as a gruesome crime scene. Now, in the living room of the apartment, they found Starlet's naked, lifeless body lying in a pool of blood. They immediately called the police because if the pictures from the scene were anything to go by, this was a murder case. Now, from the amount of blood in the room, it was clear that there had at least been a stabbing. When the police arrived, they found that the room had been turned upside down, which normally indicates a sign of a struggle. They also found one used condom, alcohol bottles, rolls of bang, a knife, which was the suspected murder weapon, and 2 used HIV self-test kits, which both read negative. According to the police, the position of Starlet's body showed that she had fought for her life and tried to reach the door to ask for help. They say that it looked like she had crawled from the room to the door and reached the door to try and ask for help before she realized that Matara had locked her in and went away with the key, so she lay there at the door and bled to death. Starlet had been stabbed in several parts of her body, including her right thigh and her neck. Police moved her body to City Mortuary, which is now called the Nairobi Funeral Home, and from this point, Matara became the main suspect in Starlet Wahu's murder. And it would actually not take long for them to trace him and track him down. Police tracked Matara using his cell phone. They tracked his phone to Mbagathi Hospital, where he had gone to seek medical attention. He locked Starlet Wahu inside the house, injured and dying, bleeding to death, and went ahead and tried to get treatment for himself. Now, there's a video that was shared online when the police went to Mbagathi and met Matara. And in the video, he tells police that Starlet Wahu had a knife and she was the one who had attacked him. He said that the attack turned into a fight, which is what landed him in the hospital. He had injuries on his legs and hands, and he also had a stab wound to his stomach. At some point, there were suspicions that he may have stabbed himself to mislead the police. The police immediately took him into custody and he was detained at Industrial Area Police Station as the investigation officially began. Now, Starlet Wahu's autopsy showed that she had been strangled and she had died of excessive bleeding. She had a deep wound on her leg. She had been stabbed through the main blood vessel on her right thigh, which is what caused the excessive bleeding. Matara was formally charged with Starlet Wahu's murder on February 2nd of 2024, and he pleaded not guilty to the charges against him. He was denied bail by the court, so the case continues while he is in detention. Now, when news broke of this case and Matara's face was all over the media, there were reports that the police may be dealing with a serial killer. At least 4 women came out to say that they had interacted with Matara and they were assaulted in the process. It was reported that Matara primarily targeted sex workers and he would use his fake British accent to get women. One of the women told the media that she met Matara on a dating website and they had agreed to hook up for the night. They booked a room and met up, but things suddenly took a turn at midnight. She said that Matara started threatening her and beating her up. He called her dad and threatened him. He checked her phone to see her M-Pesa transactions, and he specifically looked for people in her M-Pesa transactions who sent her like the most money. And when he saw those people, he would take their mobile number and even names and details. I don't know the reason for that. The woman said that she remembered that experience after seeing Matara in the media for Starlet Wahu's death. She feared that she could have ended up like Starlet because on the night that she met Matara, he fractured her neck while trying to torture her and threaten her to give up information. He also stabbed her in her private parts to force her to give up money and passwords to her devices. He tied her hands and legs and burned her with an iron box. She said that she had been afraid of telling her story because most of the time when sex workers come out with stories of assault, they are often blamed, which is not necessarily a lie. That is probably the reason why Matara targeted sex workers, because he is probably counting on the silence of the women out of shame. The second victim, another woman who came forward, said that she met Matara in October 2023. She said that he met him through the Gigi app, which is an online shopping platform. I don't know how it works because I have never used it, and I generally don't trust online shopping platforms, but that's just me. So the woman said that she wanted to sell her camera through Gigi, and Matara, through the app, expressed interest in purchasing the camera. They agreed to meet somewhere in Nakuru for the transaction. She said that she remembered meeting Matara, but she blacked out after. The next time she woke up, she said that she found herself in a hotel room within Nakuru, and she could not even recall how she got there. She said that while in the room, Matara and another man sexually assaulted her. They used a knife to threaten her so that they could steal from her. They tied her to the bed and abused her. They stole her camera and got 40,000 Kenyan shillings from her. They texted her friends to send her money, and when they did, they took all of it and even stole her phone. Now, From these confessions, it appeared that Matara was involved in robbing women and he did not operate alone. And these are just 2 victims, but there were more who shared their experiences with John Matara. I'm not going to talk about them because I wanted this episode to talk about Starlet Wahu. But when speaking to the media, Starlet Wahu's older brother, Kanyari, popularly known in Kenya as Pastor Kanyari, said that on the night of her murder, Starlet had tried to call him at around 2 a.m. Unfortunately, they were not able to talk because he did not answer the phone call. He said that Matara had threatened her and asked her to call her family and friends to send her money. Kanyari said that he believes that interaction was what led to the scuffle in the room, and he believed that when she resisted, he stabbed her in the neck and thighs and started removing money from her bank account. He then locked her in the room while she was bleeding after robbing and stabbing her. Kanyari and other family members of Starlet's family have consistently shown up to court sessions seeking justice for her murder. Starlet Wahu's family described her as a very kind person. They say that the family was not aware if Starlet was in a relationship with Matara, and they only learnt about him from the news. She was buried in a very secretive ceremony that only close family members attended in their family home in Kamulu, Machakos County. Now, the latest development in the case, which is still ongoing, is testimony from the caretaker of Papino Apartments. He gave his testimony on March 11th of 2025, and he told the court that on that day, on 4th of January 2024, at around 4 a.m. when Matara was leaving the apartment, he had seen him wrapped up in a blood-stained white towel while sitting on the veranda. Now, the next hearing of this case is scheduled for July 28th and 30th of July this year, and I will be following the case to give you updates through the podcast's social media platforms. We have come to the end of this episode, and that is all I have for you on the story of the brutal murder of Starlet Wahu. As I just said, I will be following the case, so if you would like updates from the case, you should follow Krime KE on social media. And you can support Krime KE podcast by sharing this episode with your friends so that we can get a larger community to listen to these cases. I have tagged the podcast's contact information in the show notes of this episode so that it is easier for you to reach out if you have any feedback on this episode or the podcast in general. With all that said and done, don't forget to give the podcast a 5-star rating on the platform you're listening in from, and catch the next episode of Krime KE podcast on Thursday next week. But until then, stay safe and remember, it is crime with a K.